on this episode of The Brothers Mysterium.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, there's many instances where a crime was solved with the assistance of a medium.
Beyond that, she just does the worst thing that I think you can possibly do.
Someone I know passed away, and it had been about a month since I had spoken to them. And at the funeral, there's this thought of how easy it used to be to communicate with them.
How could she be fake? How could this person take us for a ride?
If you're a crooked medium, you could sit there and give a somewhat similar reading to like 10 people in a row, and depending on how much they believe, they might all walk out going, that was incredible.
I'm somebody who, when I go to a medium or I go to a psychic or I go to a combination, I want the truth. I want full-blown the truth. Whatever you're seeing. If I'm going to get hit by a car tomorrow, I want it. And I don't need to necessarily feel good.
My brother and I have always been intrigued by the unexplainable. Like many, we're fascinated with stories of the supernatural, fringe science, and modern-day mysteries.
Though we've seen no first-hand proof of its existence, our minds remain open to the possibility.
Unsatisfied with the so-called evidence on television and the internet, we are choosing to take matters into our own hands and conduct our own interviews and research.
Now we're on a quest to speak with as many people as we can and hear the stories of these events from those who have lived them.
No Hollywood effects or exaggerations, and no hidden agenda. We invite you to listen and decide what and who you believe.
We are the Brothers Mysterium.
Welcome to another edition of The Brothers Mysterium. I am Tommy, along with my brother Eric.
Heyo.
And at long last, the episode people have been asking about. We promised you we would follow up with Bert, our resident medium expert, and that's what we're going to do today.
That's a hell of a rhyme.
Thank you. First off, I wanted to bring people up to speed with our quest to find a medium. We've reached out to different types of mediums, and it's been harder than I would have thought. A lot of them don't want to be recorded for the show, which I kind of understand. Some of them have said they'll do it, but only if we agree beforehand to show them in a positive light, to which I've told them I'm not going to agree to that because we're just going to be honest. Like, I'm not going to lie to the listeners or ourselves.
That goes against everything we stand for in this show.
And which I'm finding very interesting is I've also reached out to several people I know that have also seen mediums, not Bert or the ones he has seen, because we kind of want to get a variety of the people out there. And the people have said, like, man, please don't debunk them. I really believe in them. You know, to me, it's like, that's a really weird recommendation because it's almost like they don't believe it and they're happy in their delusion and ignorance, and we might ruin that for them.
Yeah. But we're not, just a footnote, and you may have been just about to say this, we're not trying to debunk something where we're going to it with an open mind. Because when people say debunk, you make the assumption that we're going in there ready to rip it apart and deny it, which is not our goal here.
Exactly. And I don't know if people kind of misconstrued some of what we said. Like, I know I don't like Sylvia Brown, and I kind of had the attitude, I'm a little jaded when it comes to mediums because there are so many bad ones out there, so many crappy TV shows about them. But if a part of me didn't believe in them and want to believe in them, we would not still be following up with Bert, nor on the quest to find one that we can sit down with and get a reading from.
I can say the same thing. Like, it would be cool if it was true. I just, at this point, don't really have the definitive proof to say it's an affirmative. I do lean more towards the negative, like I said, but I can say that recently someone I know passed away, and it had been about a month since I had spoken to them. And at the funeral, there's this thought of how easy it used to be to communicate with them and how easy it could have been to just reach out and say something. And now they've passed on, and you feel like that ease of communication could still be there. And you want to ask them, what's it like on the other side? How is it to be dead? You know, how did you feel before it all happened? And like, I remember standing there and I was like, this is how people feel when they decide to go see a medium. So that urge and that desire to do it and that wanting it to be real and palpable, it existed in me, if even for that brief window. And it pushed me more to want to go and see what we could find out. And I'm not going to go in there and be like, bullshit, bullshit. If they started to present things to me that I found to be legitimate, I think I'd be pretty excited about it.
Like, the point of this is not to expose people, and we're not like looking for ways to cut it down. We want it, or at least I want it to be true. I would love that.
Right, but at the same time, we're not willing to buy the thing wholesale.
Right, I'm not going to disregard my own logic and what I know to be factual just because I want to believe something.
Right.
To which, as I was saying like before, people were like, man, please don't debunk this psychic, this medium. It's kind of in the medium's court. Like, we're just going to go and sit there.
Exactly.
I'm not going to lie to the medium. I'm not going to, if they get something right, I won't pretend they didn't. I'm just going to sit there. And if the medium is good, it'll be a good reading. And then they'll, the review of the show will be great. If the medium sucks, it sucks. And one of my fears actually is I don't want to go to just like any random medium, because if we go and they do suck, then people, and I will always think like, well, that was probably just like a 2-bit medium.
Right.
We got to go to somebody a little more reputable.
You chose poorly, yeah.
So basically the hunt continues to bring you up to speed on our quest, but we definitely want to do that.
If there's any mediums listening, which I don't know if
hey, you never know.
Hit us up. brothersmysterium@gmail.com.
Send us a tweet at Mysterium Bros.
Right. Facebook.com/The Brothers Mysterium.
Yeah, we'd love that. I was looking into some research and different things about mediums, and a 2006 survey said that 42% of Americans believe in communication with the dead. I found a lot of papers about, is it just like a fad where all of a sudden there were shows like Medium and Ghost Whisperer, and then all these reality shows now and stuff. Like, is mediumship something that's like popular for 10 years, then it kind of falls off, then it comes back? And I don't know if that's true, because I feel like now it's been around for a long time. Like, we talked with Bert about like in the 90s, John Edward and all that stuff. So it's still pretty popular, but it's interesting to know that so many people do believe in mediums.
Right.
And then some other things that are interesting to note from our earlier discussions with Bert. One is the Gene Dickinson effect, which is the tendency of the media to spotlight a psychic's few correct predictions and ignore his or her many incorrect ones. And I feel like that's what a lot of people do in these readings. I didn't know there was like a name for it, or even the media will do that, where it's like, whenever you get something right, whenever somebody, reaches out to you and gets a correct reading of a dead person, you remember that, you highlight that, you say, oh, they were right, this was awesome. But if before that they got like 4 things wrong, people tend to kind of forget.
Mr. Beale, you're a satisfied client of Maureen's, I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah.
She did a reading for you not too long ago, which I understand you think is a very good reading.
Yeah.
This man asking the questions is James Randi, a retired magician who now spends his time investigating paranormal claims and exploiting fakes wherever he finds them.
How many names, did she give you during that period of half an hour?
Probably half a dozen.
About half a dozen. Mm-hmm. And did they all hit?
Not everyone.
How many
but
did
they
would
had
you
a
say?
similar sounding, like Doreen, Maureen, that type of thing.
Well, you were kind enough to give us a tape recording of that reading done by Maureen Flynn for you. And for your information, during your reading, Maureen Flynn tried these names, and they are on the tape of the reading that you're referring to. Alan, Alfred, Alice, Ann, Bill, Charlie, Colin, Connie, David, Derek, Eileen, Ellen, Flory, Frank, Fred, George, Jim, Joe, John, Karen, Catherine, Kevin, Lillian, Lisa, Liz, Lynn, Mark, Mary, May, Michael, Rob, Ron, Shirley, Sydney, Stanley, Sid, and Steve. That's 37 names, and she also asked you if you could connect with any name beginning with an N or an L, and you could not do so.
Right, and we actually talked about that in a different discussion we had regarding intuition. Where we said, you had this great coincidence where you said something and it happened, and you totally disregard all the times where you've said things and they didn't happen.
Right, and a lot of people said that with Bert, where in the first few episodes, or our conversation with him, basically it's like everything that this woman said that was right, he never really said too much about what she did that was wrong, and people were saying like, well, did she not?
He said a few things, I think.
A few, but I guess it was more, he was leaning more on the heavy side of that she was really good, and people were kind of pointing out that maybe he's buying into it too much, or he, forgot all the stuff that was wrong, remembered all the stuff that was correct. And that kind of ties into the Barnum effect, also called the Forer effect, which is the observation that individuals will give high accuracy ratings to descriptions of their personality that supposedly are tailored specifically for them, but in fact are vague and general enough to apply to a wide range of people, which makes me think of like horoscopes.
For the astrology test, each student was given a detailed horoscope.
This again is James Randi. demonstrating the Barnum effect to a group of students.
They were told it was drawn up by a professional based on information they had supplied about when and where they were born. Actually, these horoscopes were not quite what they appeared to be. I'd like you to share something with me, if you'd be so kind, just with a show of... I asked the students to grade them for accuracy on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most accurate. How many gave it a 1? Let's see a show of hands. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we scored pretty highly with this then. Let's do a little experiment. You've got your horoscopes right in front of you. Take them in your hand like this and hand them over your shoulder to the person behind you. Okay, everybody? And the guy at the end down there, you'll have to come up to the front because these people in the front don't have one now. Okay? Everybody change them around. Everybody's got a open up somebody else's horoscope and read it carefully, please. What a surprise. They had all received the same horoscope.
If you're a crooked medium, you could sit there and give a somewhat similar reading to like 10 people in a row, and depending on how much they believe, they might all walk out going, that was incredible.
Right.
I just want to say something here on my own behalf. As we've been looking into mediums, I sort of fell out of favor with them for a little bit because I was talking to somebody who was facing a life decision, and they were like, what should I do? I don't know. And I gave them great advice, and they weren't sure. And then basically they were like, you know what? I'm going to go to a medium, and they're going to ask my dead family members what I should do. Boom, that's what I'm going to do. And I realized it was basically like a cowardly way out where they just didn't want to make a decision and stick to it.
Right.
They were just looking to kind of be like, well, I put it up to the cosmos. This is what they told me. It was very cowardice. And this is at one specific individual and circumstance, but it was basically they were kind of like, whatever, I don't want to control my life anymore. I'll just let this medium make my life decisions and tell me, you know, warm and fuzzy feelings about my dead relatives, so I'll feel better.
I mean, people do things like that all the time. Not necessarily. I mean, you could replace medium with any number of things that are used to take a decision out of someone else's hands.
That is true. But some reason I was like, you know what, maybe all of this is crap. And
because
mediums,
it makes it equal with so many other things. Right. It's not the special thing anymore.
Exactly. And it just sort of like after this person rubbed me the wrong way with that, I was kind of really down on mediums, and I was like, what if it's all just crap? And, you know, you just have to go in and you're sad and you miss people, and like kind of like people saying to me, you can go see this medium, but please don't debunk it. Like, don't ruin this.
Yeah. And what I want to say about that too is then if you're listening and you know a medium, or you are a medium, like I said before, and you know, obviously, hopefully you believe in what you do and you think it's honest, let us record the reading you do with us. Because if you really have this ability, you should share it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's another interesting thing. We will get to Bert in a minute.
Eventually.
One thing that's kind of bothered me is if you have this ability, why do you charge people and why do you charge them so much? And I'm not one to knock the hustle. I understand everybody's trying to make a buck.
Right.
Maybe if I had these abilities, I would do it because it's nice to work from home and have people come in and you just talk to them. But I always think like if there's somebody like hurting and I can give them comfort and closure, it seems like a little greedy and wrong to charge them. But I don't know, just kind of a side thought.
Yeah, but also, I mean, again, then going back to James Randi, who, if you don't know about him, definitely look him up. He's been huge into debunking mediums and psychics and things like that. And he's kind of opposite us in the way that he's all about just ruining these people, where we're kind of more open-minded.
Yeah, he doesn't think it's real at all.
Yeah, but he is open-minded. He is fair in what he does, I have to say.
Well, and he does have the $1 Million Medium Challenge.
Over the last decade, Randi has challenged dozens of would-be psychics, faith healers, prophets, and purveyors of all manners of products. His challenge is simple. Prove it, and I'll make you rich.
I'm willing to be shown $1 million worth of willing to be shown. I can't say that they don't exist and that the powers don't exist. I never say that. I merely say, show me.
While many have tried, each of these files represents a challenge. Nobody has ever collected a dime.
And every time I've seen him come up against the medium and say, I will give you $1 million if we can give you a test that will definitively prove whether or not your powers are legitimate, they always say no, and they say things like,
I don't believe there's $1 million. I don't want to get into that.
Wait a minute. Hold on. That's the first objection.
No.
That's
wait,
the one that everybody makes.
One at a
There's no
time.
$1 million.
One second.
Now, there is $1 million. It's with Goldman Sachs in New York in a special account awardable only for this particular purpose. So don't give me that.
I say to myself, if I was a medium who had this ability, I would do it for free. You know what I mean? Like,
and another awesome thing is arch enemy number one, Sylvia Brown.
Sylvia Brown
said, I don't need the money. To which James Randi replied awesomely, so give it to charity.
Right.
But it's kind of like if somebody was like, if you can hit this 3-point shot, I'll give you $50. I'm confident I could hit it. I would take the shot. But it's interesting that like nobody really has attempted, especially nobody famous. I guess if they can't do it, it's kind of career suicide. But if you have the ability and you read people all the time, you do it on your own show, why not do it?
Right. And at that point, like, and this isn't a blanket statement, this isn't all mediums, but if you're one of these top-notch mediums, which Bert, who is a big believer in mediums, said the people at the top are often usually the fakes. It's these people that come up against people like James Randi, who they're the ones who back down. And almost at that point, by saying like, giving a crappy excuse for why you won't do it is almost to me the same thing as admitting that you're a fraud.
That's true. To circle back now, we seem to be very down on mediums, but...
Which we said we weren't going to do before.
Well, we're going to switch it up now, though, because there's something that's brought me back into mediums and believing, which is these mediums that help solve crimes, solve murders. I've been reading a lot about it. I've been watching different things.
Yeah, I don't know that much about it, so...
Well, it's crazy. I mean, there's many, many, many instances where police, and this is cool to me because it's factual, it's documented, where a crime was solved with the assistance of a medium.
Only on CBS 5 tonight, it is a story 4 years in the making.
A psychic medium very possibly solves a murder. Heather Moore takes us back.
When Marita Wilson's aunt in Peru suddenly passed away in 2007, doctors ruled it as stomach cancer. Marita wanted an investigation, but before that could happen, she wanted a psychic medium. Our producer set her up with Deborah Martin, giving only the barest of details. What happened in the years since has stunned us all.
Okay, let me try to connect. And is this your aunt's picture?
Correct.
Another session recaptures the emotions and what they both describe as a connection to the other side.
I'm feeling somebody choked her. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling it. Someone choked her. It was a man. And he's tall, and he has big hair. And he approached her, and they had I can't get the word. They were having conversation. They were conflicting, and she was saying no, and she wouldn't do what they wanted her to do. So I don't know what that means, but I'd seen the signature, and she won't do it until he got mad, and he grabbed her throat, and he strangled her.
On that information, the Wilson family demanded that the body be exhumed. 3 months after the burial, doctors found the organs still fresh, profused with blood.
When the doctor checked the stomach didn't have any cancer. And also they said probably heart attack, her heart completely, no heart attack at all. But in the lungs, they could see the collapse, which proved what she told me, asphyxia.
And then Deborah gave a name, Marcos, and a description of a man unfamiliar to the Wilsons.
I see him. He's taller, slender, dark hair. It's almost like it's an afro, but it's not. His hair's it's kind of wild and round and large, high.
More than a year later, police zeroed in on a killer.
That was fantastic. I remember I called Deborah immediately. I said, we found Marcos. We catch him and we put him in the jail.
For Marita, closure. For Deborah, another opening between this world and the one beyond.
An Australian Aboriginal elder who claims to have seen the location of a missing child in a dream led police to an adult human torso on Thursday. The torso is believed to belong to a Sydney woman reported missing in June. Police confirmed that they had contacted the family, but did not confirm that the body was hers. Chief Inspector from Homicide Squad, Pamela Young, spoke with reporters.
very sad to say that an adult female torso has been located where the witnesses said that they thought there was a body.
Young also discussed the circumstances under which the body was found.
She had a sense or a feeling that it was worth her while to come to this particular part of the park. And it's quite unusual circumstances that has brought us here, that she would think that initially and then actually find a body.
Cheryl Carroll Lagerwee, the Aboriginal elder, thought she was leading police to another body.
And on the flip side, I do realize and acknowledge that there are psychic mediums who claim to have helped the police, who have not. Sometimes they'll say that they helped solve the case, and then when people go to the police say they weren't involved, but they didn't really offer us any new information. They weren't that useful. They didn't really assist us. And at the same time, there are others that will show up at the police and give super generic, vague information, like the body is in the woods, it's somewhere near water, I see a school or a church nearby. And that applies to basically every town all over the United States, saying things like it's in an isolated area. Obviously, common sense will tell you that a killer is not going to leave a body on Main Street. They're going to put it somewhere isolated. But there are, again, a number of really high-profile, prominent cases. Nancy Meyer, Christy Robinette, Alison Dubois, just a few of these psychic mediums that have actually helped out the police.
And that wouldn't...
it's interesting, and it gives it credibility.
That wouldn't be admissible in court when they said, like, where's the proof that this guy's guilty? And they said, like, that psychic told us.
Right.
You know what I mean? They actually have to... But
they connect the dots for them.
Right.
They do it through different ways. I said remote viewing. Sometimes it's speaking with the person who was murdered. Other times it's psychometry, which is, it's also called psychoscopy or token object reading. And it's an extrasensory perception characterized by the ability to kind of touch something that person owned and then read from it. So they'll say, give me their car keys, give me something that they owned. And from there, they can kind of ascertain information on the person, how they died, where they are. But what I like about that, and the reason that kind of made me think, like, there is something to this, is because, again, it's a concrete case. Somebody's in jail. Somebody was found. The police, who are usually kind of like tight-lipped and won't admit to such things, have said, like, yeah, I thought this woman was crazy, but, she led me here. We found something. She led me there. We found something. From there, we were able to, piece this guy at the scene. And then, bada bing, he confessed.
Okay, and now I know there may be people listening who are saying, yeah, but that's a psychic. And we did talk about this in one of the earlier Bert episodes. Actually, it was episode 2, the first one in which we talked to Bert, which, if you're not familiar with Bert's story, definitely go back and listen to that 3-part series there, because otherwise everything that follows from here on out is not going to make much sense.
Episodes 2, 3, and 4.
Right. Oh, okay, yeah, so people will say those are psychics, but there's really... not too much of a fine line there. There are people who say they're psychics, people say they're mediums.
There's an overlap.
Strong overlap.
Like I said, some people will say, like, I can see the murdered girl, she's telling me this.
Right.
So that's a direct medium. Other psychics might say, I'm seeing a field and whatever.
But if you're doing the token object reading, like you were saying, I think that that's like
more of a psychic style.
But it's also a mediumship, because you're communicating with that person through this object in a way. You know what I mean?
That's true. So anyway, that's why I'm back on mediums.
Yeah, thank you for that. That actually brightened my mentality a little bit here, because those are people doing good things with their power. And,
correct. And there's proof.
Right.
It's not just like people saying, this medium was great. Why? They told me good stuff. It's
they're not just taking advantage of, people who are at a loss or grieving, or middle-aged women who don't know what to do with their lives or whatever.
The Brothers Mysterium.
Okay. So before we get started, let's recap Bert's story. Back in 1993, when Bert was just a small child, his father passed away.
His name is Anthony.
Because of this, Bert's grandfather, on his mother's side, took a very active role in raising Bert and his brother. Years later, when Bert was in college, he was inspired to seek out a medium in an attempt to get in touch with his deceased father. This brought him to
Cindy Newcomb,
a psychic medium from upstate New York. Cindy gave Bert his first private reading.
Over the phone.
Bert was pretty blown away by the experience.
Tell me something, Jules. Who's the guy with the BMW? I said, that would be my grandfather. He is a BMW. His father, he's coming through. And I said, oh my goodness. And she goes, yeah. She goes, and he just says hello. I've got a father who passed. And she goes, oh, I know. Anthony. And I said, yeah, your father is telling me to tell you not to cry. And I go, how did... Because he's standing next to you on the front lawn. Oh my goodness, this is crazy.
Not too long after, Bert heard the name Concetta Bertoldi. Concetta was not only an author of books that gave insight into the afterlife, but also a medium. When Bert found out that Concetta hosts group readings, he decided to give it a go. Although his personal experience at the event was not as impactful as his reading with Cindy Lane Newcomb, he was very impressed with Concetta Bertoldi's abilities.
She says, okay, you, and she called on one of them, and she goes, I feel like you're here for somebody who's very young and went before their time. I'm seeing her on the ground. I'm seeing her on the concrete. And she's bleeding. And she said, yeah, she was actually murdered. She got called to these two parents, and she said, I feel like there's a young person involved in this. Mother starts crying the whole thing. When she picked me, she goes, I feel like you have a deceased person who's almost like a father. And I said, my father. She goes, he has somebody that he's with, and they're missing a leg. That was his cousin. His cousin was in Vietnam.
Unfortunately, not too long after that, Bert's maternal grandfather passed away. This brought Bert back to Cindy Lane Newcomb. Once again, Cindy was able to help Bert make contact with the other side and resolve many of the questions that weighed on him after his grandfather's passing.
So she gets to the phone and she goes, did you just have somebody pass? I said, yeah. I said, this is my grandfather. I said, it's my mom's dad. And she goes, I feel like he passed away somewhere like over the summer. And I said, he did. And she goes, you don't really know how. And I go, that's exactly it. I said, we don't know what happened. So she goes, yeah, he died of an aneurysm. And she goes, he likes that you wear his ties. And she goes, your grandfather says if it wasn't for the doctor, he would have passed away 6 months prior. And then she starts to laugh. So she goes, your grandfather's kind of teasing me. He's going, you don't know where Englewood is? Which is verbatim, exactly what he would say at that moment with that kind of deadpan type of sarcastic humor.
So, after our last round of interviews with Bert, we left off with him preparing for his first face-to-face encounter with a medium.
Yes.
As usual, Bert agreed to share his thoughts on the experience with us. And that brings us to now, where we caught up with Bert via Skype only a short while after the reading. How long ago was that reading? Like a week ago?
That was actually a week ago yesterday, so it's been 8 days.
Because he had been so impressed with her abilities at the group readings, Bert decided to reach out to Concetta Bertoldi, a medium whose reputation and popularity are currently on the rise.
This is a person that has sold many books regarding her medium capabilities.
Not only was Concetta added to the New York Times bestseller list in 2008 for her book entitled Do Dead People Watch You Shower?, but she's been featured in Time magazine and made several television appearances, including one on The Early Show on CBS.
She sees dead people and she says they have a lot to tell us. Concetta Bertoldi is the author of a new book with the irresistible title, Do Dead People Walk Their Dogs? When did you realize that you could communicate with the dead?
I've always had the ability. I never remember being without them.
And what do they want us who are still living to know?
They want us to know they never leave us and that they'll love us through all eternity.
She actually has a wait list for private readings. It can be 5, 6, 7 years. That's how popular this woman is.
It's because of this high demand that Bert knew he had to act fast if he wanted to book a reading with Concetta.
So I'd actually originally called her in 2012, and I was put on a wait list for 2015 for a private reading. And so interestingly enough, here we are. And I called her office, and I spoke with her secretary, and I said, okay, so it's 2015, where are we? And she says,
well, unfortunately, we're in a position now where we can't take a reading from you.
And I said, well, why is that? And she says,
well, we sent you an email in 2013 asking if you wanted to remain on the wait list for your reading in 2015, and you didn't respond.
I said, well, that's really a shame. I said, hopefully you can get me in, either later in the year or next year. And she goes,
we're up to 2022 on the wait list.
Yeah. You heard that correctly.
2022. And I said, well, I really don't feel like waiting 7 years. I said, the Earth might not be around in 7 years. I might not be around in 7 years, or a combination. I said, so, let's see what we can do here as far as anything earlier. And she goes,
I doubt it.
She goes,
are you still interested?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to be put on a list for that amount of time. So sure enough, she hangs up. About 2 hours later, she calls me and says,
I'll be damned. We just had a cancellation, and I can get you in on February 18th.
And I said, you got to be kidding me. And she said,
nope.
She goes,
12 o'clock. Hopefully you can make it.
And she said,
the rate is $175.
And I said, for how long?
20 minutes.
So this woman is in a position, this medium is in a position of making
$175 in 20 minutes.
Even though it seems a little pricey, Bert realizes this is probably his only shot to get a private reading with Concetta. Well, at least in this decade. So, he goes for it. Finally, the big day arrives.
Our house was actually about an hour away. And it's not a town that's anywhere close to me. It's not a town that's easy to get to. So, waking up the day of the reading, I was already anxious and nervous. And then on top of that, I had the anxiety that stems from, of course, being, having to be on the road and getting there in time and dealing with traffic and all the other nonsense. But I get to the house, and it's in this country kind of back roads, and it's kind of like a Cosby Show type thing. She's got her house, her residential unit, separate from this office that's kind of been dug out of the house.
Bert enters.
And we sit down.
And the reading begins.
One of the first things that she picked up on was my anxiety. She said, I feel like you're very nervous. Now, you could have picked that up from my body language, a facial expression. You could have seen it on my face the moment I walked in the door. So she goes, I feel like you're very nervous. You kind of had anxiety coming here. She goes, you really do need to relax. Then she says, I feel like you're anxious in life. You've got a lot of anxiety in life, just every day, just constantly kind of on edge. Now, most people are on edge. Most people are anxious. Whether we're trying to get to work on time or we got that boss that's on us or we're trying to get good grades, whatever it may be, most people are anxious. So she really didn't hit on anything that was too specific.
Bert kind of shrugs this off and figures she's probably just slow to warm up. But her next move confuses him even more.
She just does the worst thing that I think you can possibly do. And I've seen this by watching John Edward on television. She starts hauling out names. Now, who is Samuel? Do you have a Samuel in your family? And I go, I don't. And she goes, it's got to be something like Sam or Sammy. And she just starts taking stabs at any type of variation with Sam in it. And I'm like, not at all, not at all. And she goes, okay, well, that name is important. So hold on to that name in your head. And you might at some point realize either who this was in the past or you might come across them after today. And I'm like, okay. And of course, immediately I'm skeptical because she's having to throw out these names. Then she goes, I have an A name, like a Alfred. And I'm like, nah, no Alfred. It's almost like she's just throwing out names, putting a bunch of names in a hat or a jar and just seeing who can we pick out that will just resonate with the person in front of me, and they'll go, oh yeah, absolutely.
Now remember, Bert's father's name is Anthony, but at this point, Bert's a little reluctant to give that information up just because the letter A is on the table.
Right. I'm trying not to give her anything because immediately she made me skeptical with the Sam, Samuel, that whole thing. And so because of that, I was giving her a lot less than I maybe would have under normal circumstances. I was really trying to get her to prove to me that she was genuine and that she was real and what she was coming across was, something that was viable.
Regardless of Bert's attempt to guard this information until Concetta gives him something more specific, she continues to insist that she is getting an A name.
So she says an A. It's got to be an A.
So eventually, Bert tells her.
And I go, well, my father, he passed, and his name is Anthony. She goes, oh, okay. Okay, so he's coming through.
At this point, Bert takes note of the fact that although he is sitting directly across from Concetta Bertoldi, she's never actually making eye contact with him.
She's almost looking off to the side or looking above you. And it's not because she sees something, it's just because she's, I think, trying to not focus on your facial expressions and be distracted by them.
Concetta continues on, still claiming that Bert's deceased father is coming through to her.
Now, he just adored your mother. Just adored your mother.
Again, information that's just too vague for Bert's liking.
It can apply to anybody. Usually, there's a 50-50 shot that a son is before you and the son's father and mother love each other. Unless there's some horrible divorce. So she really, once again, didn't hit on that. And
my father was not the type of person that would be, oh my God, I love your mother, or I love you. He just wasn't that type of person. Also, being that he had come through on previous readings on the phone with this Cindy Lane Newcomb, I have a feel for how he would come across in this type of venue. He doesn't come across in previous readings like that, overexpressing himself and, really just trying to repeat himself and sell something home. Just very, very relaxed in his word usage and how he's coming across. So I was skeptical of that immediately. She did say that I think he has a dog with him. And I said, okay. I go, you're right. That would make sense. He had a dog who was here on Earth, passed. And she didn't describe the dog. She wasn't able to say, it's a dog that starts with a B. The dog's name is Baron. It's, a German Shepherd. Nothing like that. Left it just very basic. So then from that point on, she starts saying things that make absolutely no sense. And really just shots in the dark. Now, he has a sibling that's with him. He's a sibling that's deceased, right? What's his sibling's name? He doesn't have a sibling that's deceased. She goes, oh, he doesn't? I go, no. And she goes, oh, okay. Now you have a sibling, which is pretty, not that good of a guess, in the sense that most people have siblings. So she goes, oh, you have a sibling? And I said, I do have a sibling. And she goes, okay. She goes, now you're polar opposites? And I said, no, I wouldn't say that. And she goes, okay. She goes, but one of you, either you or him, have his name in your name, whether it be a middle name or a first name. And I go, no. She goes, oh, all right. And I go, my brother was going to be named Anthony. I go, but at the last minute, they chose not to do that and went a different way. She goes, okay, so that's what I'm seeing. So she jumped on me saying anything that was reasonably close to what she had presented to me beforehand.
Concetta goes on, still focusing on Bert's father.
He's got this mother figure with him. She goes, so that's got to be your grandmother. And I go, nope, both grandmothers are alive. She goes, well, who's the mother figure? And I go, I have no idea. But he definitely does not have a mother figure with him in the sense that he doesn't have an aunt he was close with. His mother's not there. His mother-in-law is not there. There's nothing like that. And he doesn't have a sister who's with him or a female cousin. There's no a female position that would be over there that would be coming across. She goes, oh. And she kind of looked a little dumbfounded. Almost like, crap, I got caught. She goes, so he's showing me a picture of him in, the military. Was he in the military? And I go, no, he wasn't in the military. She goes, not at any point. And I go, no. She goes, was he in, Boy Scouts or anything like that? Because I'm seeing him in, a uniform. I go, no, nothing like that. And I go, well, my grandfather was in the National Guard. My grandfather is deceased. And she jumped right on that as soon as she could. Oh, your grandfather. Okay, so I have both of them over there. And in my attempt to reach my grandfather, I threw out his name and I threw out his, kind of background information, and she took that and she wrote it. And right from that point, she goes, okay, so your grandfather, that's who I have. And I don't believe that for a single second. I just don't believe that it was that convenient for her. And it was just as soon as I mentioned him, he just sprung up. Just don't believe it. So at this point, she says things even further that don't make any sense. She goes, now, there's an unborn child, or there's, no, and then she corrects herself and goes, there's a child that died very early, within a couple of months or a couple of years. And I go, not that I know of. I mean, I can check on this. And then I'm like, but I don't, and then she cuts me off and goes, now, who's Larry? I go, Larry? I go, I don't have a Larry. And I have to say, at this point, I'm actually feeling a little embarrassed and a little uncomfortable because this woman is just not hitting anything.
Once again, Bert takes notice of Concetta's lack of eye contact and her facial expression as he's negating most of her suggestions.
She's just kind of squinting, kind of like the sun's in her eyes, kind of confused, kind of like, that's not the answer I'm getting, and not necessarily nervous, you know. And I think this might be because this is somebody who's already established. You know, this is somebody who's been around for a very long time, and this is somebody who does readings quite frequently. So, you know, she might be a very good poker player. You know, she's somebody who's been to the table many, many times, and if they've got a bad hand, they know how to remain stoic. And if I could conjecture, that's why I wasn't seeing any type of embarrassment or what am I going to do to escape the situation? Oh my God, we're only 11 minutes in to a 20-minute reading and I'm not hitting anything. And I think the saddest part of this whole thing was 11 minutes in, I had already dismissed. I mean, I more or less dismissed it from the first 2 minutes when she started going off on Samuel. But I can say that the first 10 minutes in, I had already just wrote this whole thing off. Unless she had wowed me, unless she had said something that was going to be so extraordinary, I had kind of written her off, which is kind of sad.
At this point, the clock is almost up.
With the next 6 minutes, she starts basically blowing smoke up and telling me I'm going to live a long life. I'm going to be very successful. She says that my father is extremely proud of me. He, loves me dearly, loves my mom dearly. He's gotten over to the other side just fine, and there were certain things that he wasn't aware of, or there were certain things that he had had questions to when he was here on Earth, and now he has answers to. He sees everything clearly. And then she goes, now your father has like a glass in his hand, and he's got like a little bit of alcohol in it, and he's toasting you. He's just toasting you. And I'm like, okay, well, he really didn't drink, and he didn't. And so, she's at this point selling feel goods at the end of the reading. She wants you to come out going, wow, I'm going to live a long life. I'm going to be so happy. My father is perfectly fine, or whomever it may be. And then I started to think to myself as she's saying this is something that she had said to previous people in those group readings. And there was a young lady whose boyfriend had passed, and they had been seeing each other for quite some time. And the boyfriend passed, I want to say, from cancer. And so Concetta Bertoldi was able to actually pick up on the fact that the boyfriend had, in fact, passed, that he was very ill for a very long period of time, that it wasn't something that was quick, it was something that was very painful, and that they had actually met in high school. So she was very accurate with that. But then at the end, with this gal in this group reading, she starts selling, good feelings, essentially. He just loved you, he adored you, he fantasized about being with you, he wanted to marry you, he's disappointed that he didn't get to have that opportunity with you. He's so proud of you. He knows that you really just carried on after he passed. And, and that was something that she had kind of repeated to a couple of people. And, she's trying to give you that old cushy good feeling in the pit of your stomach as you're leaving her. And it may or may not be true, but based on the fact that it's more or less a cookie cutter type thing, it's probably not true, or probably not as accurate as you would like it to be.
It's pretty clear at this point, Bert isn't going to buy the subtle switch from medium mode into psychic mode as a way of nicely wrapping things up.
If you want to talk about modes, I think she went into bullshit mode. I think she went into salesperson mode, and I think she's trying to get you to leave going, wow, this was really worth it. I feel so much better. I think to a certain extent, it depends on the person who's getting the reading, and what they're looking for. Now, me, I'm somebody who wants the truth. I'm somebody who, when I go to a medium, or I go to a psychic, or I go to a combination, I want the truth. I want full-blown the truth. Whatever you're seeing. If I'm going to get hit by a car tomorrow, I want it. And I don't need to necessarily feel good. I want clarity. I want answers to my questions, whatever those answers may be, whatever those questions may be. If it's doom and gloom, okay, I'll deal with it. And I want that. And even if you tell me in a year there's going to be somebody that's going to rob your house, that's fine with me. But there's a lot of people that I think, and I think maybe they're the most vulnerable, who go to these readings and they're looking just to feel so good. They just lost a loved one and they're looking to they want to make sure that person is 100% happy where they are, wherever that may be. They really don't want to hear anything else. They're paying for peace of mind. That's exactly it. They're paying for peace of mind. And, listen, you can tell that to yourself. You can try to reaffirm in your own head, okay, so, Grandpa got to where he needed to be. And he's fine. I'm sure he's fine. You don't need to go to a reading for that. But, also, I think she also caters to a certain, which is, I think, interesting. She caters to a certain demographic. I think I'd expressed this in a past episode. When I was at her group reading, I was probably the youngest person that was there. I think the next oldest was probably about late, I would say early 30s. And the bulk, I would say about 75% of the people that were in the room, if not more, were middle-aged or elderly women. And I think that women might be, in this particular instance, a little bit, it's woman to woman. Concetta Bertoldi being a female, speaking to females who are also her age. I think somebody who's a female that age group might be a little bit softer, a little bit more open to it, a little bit more emotional. If you tell a 35-year-old man that, oh my God, you're going to live a happy life, your deceased relative loves you so much, you're so happy, it might not come across in the same way. But I think you got a 65, 70, 75-year-old woman who, just lost her husband of God knows how many years. She'll go, oh my God, this is great. Thank you so much. And I think the other thing too, and this is important, it's kind of like Charlie's Angels. We still don't know what Charlie looks like. And we have our own perception in our head of what Charlie looks like. And I think in that show, the writers don't want you to know what Charlie looks like. They want you to focus on whatever his message is. They don't want you to see his facial expressions. They don't want you to see what he's wearing. Whatever the mission that he is promulgating that day, they want you to focus on that. With this, I think the same thing holds true. And that's why I recommend a phone reading over a in-person reading. Because over the phone, you're not focusing on somebody's facial expressions. You're not focusing on whether they're dressed in a certain way or what they look like. You're just getting the message. And the message is what's really important. And with this phone reading that I've had multiple times with this Cindy Lay Newcomb, I still don't know what she looks like. And I want it that way. But I think we're made so much more vulnerable being in an in-person reading. Because how I know this, Concetta Bertoldi looks like this stately, almost like a Southern Belle type woman. Looks like she has money. She's very well dressed, very lot of makeup on, extremely classy, jewelry, the whole 9 yards. And then she's got this beautiful house. How could she be fake? How could this person take us for a ride? Because she's just so just beautiful in her appearance. She's not sitting there in sweatpants or anything like that. And I think that kind of diminishes the message. And how you're more willing to take whatever she's feeding you because it's coming from somebody who's, it's coming from somebody who looks the part. They don't look like they're taking you for a ride.
When it ends, how are you feeling after you get back in the car after this 20-minute session? What's going through your mind? What emotions are you feeling?
Cheated.
I'm feeling like I almost got swindled. And, it's not a good feeling to have, but I'm also a little bit proud of myself because I have the mindset and the intelligence to know I did get swindled. I'm almost proud of myself for being able to analyze and decompartmentalize the situation enough that I go, okay, well, I can't buy this.
Leading into this, you had seen her twice at the group shows, and she kind of impressed you, right?
Yeah, and that's what was weird about this. And that's a great point. She hadn't impressed me as much as the Cindy Lane Newcomb, who I've had multiple phone readings with. But she did hit certain things. And if we recall from a previous show, she came across this family and friends that were quite young. They were in their teenage years. And they came across, she came across a young person who had passed on in her, late teens. And we remember that this teenager came across and actually showed an image to Concetta Bertoldi of her death scene, which turned out to be a parking lot where she was murdered. And the family was giving away nothing to Concetta Bertoldi when she was bringing this up. And she goes, why is she showing me murdered? Like, why is she showing me like a parking lot scene? And that was the actual scene. Now, that's as accurate as you can get. If I wasn't impressed with her in some form from those group readings that I had gone to, I would not have taken upon myself to have a private reading. I would have written her off then.
After seeing her perform very well in the group setting to her basically bombing the one-on-one reading, is she a swindler? Is she a scam artist? Or was she just having an off day?
Well, I was about to hit on that off day thing. We're all allowed to have an off day. And, this is her work. This is her work. This is her career. And this is her job. This is what she does. This is how she makes a living. And, it's like working in an office. Sometimes you go into an office, you rock it. Other times you have a day where you didn't get enough sleep that night or just not feeling working there and you've had it, whatever the case may be, and you just don't perform well. So it's very possible that this could have been an off day. What I believe is that she might have some powers. She might have some visions. And I think she tries to oversell her capabilities. And so I think when she's sitting down with somebody and she says to them, I'm coming across with an A, and the person goes, it's my father. And then she goes, I have a dog with that person. She's on. But I think that's the extent of it. Then she goes, oh shit, wait a second, those are only two statements. And I have about another 18 minutes with this person. So now I gotta just start flailing in the wind with certain. And I think that because she's able to do one thing or two things, she's trying to sell you into thinking that she can do the extra 8. And I don't think she can do that. And I think that's why we see this common denominator with her from these now 3 experiences in total, where she hits on a couple of things, they're accurate. And I think she's telling the truth. I think it's definitely a verification that she does have these powers. But then I think beyond that, she goes, oh, wait a second. Now I got to sell good feelings, and I've got to hit on something else. I just can't say, I can't stop here. I've got to go forward. And so I do think she's real in some form. I do think she has these powers, but I think she's overextending them to her own benefit, or maybe to her own chagrin, because you have people. I can't imagine I'm the only person that picks up on this.
Has there been occurrences that you're aware of somebody getting the wrong spirit coming through, or a different spirit than even anyone you know?
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I know somebody was in a session before me, before I got there, and I know that somebody was coming in after me. So it's very, very possible.
So let's say a year from now, God willing, nobody else close to you in your family passes away. Would you see a medium anyway?
Good question. I probably would. I probably would, because I think enough things change in the course of a day, even without somebody passing away. I think enough changes with a person over the course of a year, and you go, you know what? I think it's time to have another reading. Also, I think when you know that you have a deceased relative, and this is probably why I will definitely do this and have another reading in a year, or I guess in October, because that was my last reading with Stanley Newcomb, is because I know I have a relative who's passed on, and I know that going to this medium is the only way, sadly, that I'll be able to communicate with that relative. And so just for that reason alone, I will ensure that I do talk to her, because I'll need to get a hold of my grandfather or my father or whatever it may be. So even if actually nothing changes in my life and also nobody passes, I'll be like, you know what? I really need to check in with my grandfather.
One thing I like a lot about Bert, and the reason we kind of picked him for this, is because I feel like a lot of people buy too much into mediums, and I kind of like how he's able to step back, and he even says this, he has the wherewithal to say, like, this is crap, this isn't working, I don't buy this. And I like that about him, because he's not 100% mediums are real, everything they say, it's legit, I buy it all. So it's nice to have somebody with a balanced perspective.
Right. He definitely surprised me a little bit with his reaction here, because he was, I think more so because it was Concetta Bertoldi, and he had kind of been a fan of hers after going to the 2 group readings, and now suddenly it shows, and he even said it, an extreme amount of maturity on his part and like smarts, Right. He was smart enough to realize that he was cheated, to quote him. Yeah. And then now kind of breaking down what he said, once again, something that is the theme I've uncovered in Bert's readings are these lucky breaks where he kind of walks right into what he wanted. I need a medium, and then his mom finds somebody and says, you should go see this medium. And this is the same thing where, they're booked until 2022. He screwed up and never replied, so he lost his appointment. Right. And then the same day they get a call back like, hey, there was just a cancellation where we'll slide you right in. So, he just kind of always just finds a way. Yeah, and that was interesting because when he said the waitlist thing, it kind of struck me as being strange, because that kind of diminishes your need to see the medium. Like like I was saying earlier, like I was like, oh man, like this person's gone. I wish I could talk to them again. And then if like 7 years went by, I think I'd kind of be like, you're over it? Yeah, it's not like I don't know. And also it's just like never mind. Well, here's one thing I'll say that crossed my mind, not to be a pessimist, but you're seeing people for like only 20 minutes. You're telling me that you're really booked until that far away? Or is that part of the game where it's like, I'm so busy, it's this, oh, wait, okay, we can squeeze you in. So that one of the first things I thought of as a grifter was... But he did say he signed up in 2012 and was on the wait list till 2015. That's true. And then actually, there's no way if they were going to pull that, they would have done it back in 2012. You know what I mean? Yeah. Unless that's the time it takes for them. No, that doesn't work either. I was going to say to dig stuff up on you, but in this case, they totally blew it. So they weren't digging stuff up on him. Right. And at that point, it's like the longer they wait, the harder, like more will change. So right. It's like, oh, crap, he got married now. Oh, this happened. Oh, this person died. I mean, the overall scheme in this one that I think was great for us, great for the show, horrible for Bert, was that the reading did not go well at all. As where in the previous ones, as we said in the open, it was sort of like a lot of right answers. She had a lot of hits, not a lot of misses. This one was misses all over the place with... Nothing correct, I'd say, right? Well, yeah, basically, Samuel, nothing with that. And then even saying things like, well, hang on to that name. That might mean something. You're going to meet a Sam, a Sammy at some point in your life. Yeah. So that doesn't, Alfred, what's the A name? Missing Bert's father, didn't nail his disposition, his personality. The thing that I was like blown away by was like, now your father really loved your mother. Right. Of course they got married. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of, I guess the quote unquote hits would be those sort of generic comments. Even the father's expression wasn't right. He's cheersing, holding up a glass.
Right.
Bert said he never really drank. He was really confused by the thing about the father and the dog. Never went into what the dog was doing, which a future episode will be animals in the afterlife. But, no, he does not have a deceased sibling. There was no dead baby. The father's name being in one of the brothers' names never happened. Both grandmothers were still alive, so there's no mother figure there. No military service for his father. There's no Larry, so again, just kind of throwing out names that mean nothing to him. The last 6 minutes.
Yeah.
You're going to have a long life. Your dad's proud of you. It goes back to just generic blanket statements.
And that's what I had noticed listening to this interview is that if you remember in episode 3, when Bert goes to the group reading with Concetta Bertoldi, she says the thing to him about, your father, the guy with one leg, which at first he was like, no, of course not, which later made sense, which just could have been a coincidence. I don't know. But she ends off with that same idea. She says to him, oh, your father is so proud of you. And I'm wondering if that's like a general wrap up that she uses all the time.
It could be. I think Bert even said it was very cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And one thing I liked, which as I said about Bert, was he's sort of, down to earth in a lot of ways. Like he said blatantly, I'm here for the truth, good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah.
He probably would have rather Concetta say, your father's here and he's horribly disappointed in you because you did this, that, and that. And even though he might have left feeling like crap, at least he would have been like, well, at least my dad saw that and it's true.
Right. As long as she threw some truthful facts in there with it. Like this is his name, this is what he looks like, the whole hit every target, and then said, by the way, he doesn't like you. You know what I mean?
At least, some validation and truth. I kind of like that he's like, I came for the truth, not the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, he has integrity pretty much.
Right. And instead of walking out well, at least dad's still proud of me, he walked out well, that sucked.
Right.
And that brings up a few different ideas. He said maybe she's just overstating her abilities. I had said to him in one of our first talks to him, have you ever heard of somebody going into a medium and they just go I got nothing for you? Or, they having a bad day. We all have bad days. Maybe that was her off day and she just wasn't on her game. Was it? I asked him, could it have been that was somebody from the previous reading who hadn't left? Maybe the next guy was going to come in and go, I'm missing my dad, Samuel, my brother, Larry, and my best friend, Alfred.
Right.
And maybe there was a crisscross and, Bert was like, oh, I don't know. And I guess
thought of that too in a different way. Do they ever mix up if it's not real mediumship, do they ever mix up files? Like maybe not actually that she was contacting the guy's family, but maybe she pulled out the wrong file beforehand and looked and said, okay, yeah, Sam, Alfred, Larry, got it. And that was for Joe Jenkins, not Bert.
That was for Burt Reynolds, not this Bert.
Yeah.
And then my final thing is, and it's hard to say, but she was real good in the group readings. She got the young girl that was murdered, the kid who was able to now play soccer. She got a lot of stuff right, impressed Bert so much that he wanted a one-on-one reading, which makes me say, was this just a bad day for her? Or were those plants in the crowd in a group reading to suck people into going to one-on-ones where she takes your money and gives you 20 crappy minutes?
I never thought of that.
As a grifter.
Yeah, you can never exclude ideas like that. You can never think that people won't sink that low. Playing off the bad day idea. That excuse only goes so far, because she said when talking about there's a moment where he says I pretty much fed her all the information about my grandfather, and then she totally rode that wave. He says, and then she said or Bert said that she said that she sees both of them, and then she even said, I see your father toasting. Now if she's gotten that far where she's actually seeing them, whether it be a mental picture or however it works for her, you would think she would have been able to hit more. That doesn't count as an off day for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. Who knows? Unless she was just grasping at straws and making it up and saying,
right,
I see him.
Which Bert kind of hinted at that too, because he said, maybe she was having an off day, but she still felt the need to kind of save her ass in some way.
Well, I think that's the thing. She was on a sinking ship, and at that point, she's just, and maybe that's why she was trying so hard to hit him with the last 6 minutes of, you're going to be great, your life's going to be great, you're going to be happy, your family's proud of you, your dad's cheersing you, it's a great job, maybe hoping that he would leave being a little bit more like, okay, it wasn't that bad. I got this out of it. I got that out of it. As opposed to him just leaving, being like feeling embarrassed for her.
Now, that's something that I kind of smell as being a tactic, because if you remember the Sylvia Brown clip from episode 3 also, the woman with the 9/11 thing where she says, oh, my boyfriend died or my husband died. And Sylvia Brown goes, yeah, he drowned. And she goes, no, he died on 9/11. She, says
that they hit him with the hose.
Yeah, they hit him with the hose. She changes her thing. She says, I see him in water. And then she says a couple of seconds later, he's filled with water, which, it could have been like, oh, he's bringing in smoke and his lungs filled up. Right. But then she says, and this is very similar to what Concetta Bertoldi did with Bert here. She says, you know what? It doesn't matter because he's on the other side. So she pretty much says like,
she wipes her own thing out.
Right. And she tries to get you with that nice little hook. Like, forget all that. He's safe on the other side. He survived death, so to speak.
Right. He's now happy in a better place.
Right. And like Bert didn't buy that, but I'm sure a lot of people are like, damn, that's all I needed. Great.
Right. Trying to give some closure. Yeah. It's, as I said, I feel bad for Bert, but it's good for the show because it's the opposite of what we've had so far. And again, like a little side note, we're not trying in any way to, ruin the reputation of Concetta Bertoldi. This was one man's opinion and our opinion on his description of a reading, but I guess things don't always go so good, which obviously is edited out of the TV shows and anything else. But this was not a good reading.
There's something else I want to add too, which we'll see if this works. I might have to edit this or cut it, but we'll see if this sparks any good discussion. I feel like a lot of times with people like Teresa Caputo and like he was describing Concetta Bertoldi in a similar way to her, their idea of heaven and the afterlife that they present to people matches their personality almost too much to the point where it seems artificial. Like he said, these are like, these nice ladies and like, here he is toasting alcohol to you and things like that. Like, and I almost don't find that to be like a good, I can't say I know what the afterlife is like, but I can say what I feel like it's not like.
You don't think it's a guy sitting in a recliner drinking a scotch?
Right, doing things that they would have done in real life. Because to me, it's just like this cushy little cute, like, after you die, you actually just keep on living, but you only do the things that you enjoy. And,
you never get old and you never get sick.
This is what I like as a woman who lives out in Long Island or New York or whatever. And this is what people probably do in heaven. Now, if like I said, like I wanted to see like a medium and someone was like, all right, come with me. And they brought me through the woods to some trailer where there's like a guy with an eye patch and like a leather book. And he was like, hold on, I'm going to contact your dead whatever. And he came up with stuff. You know what I mean? Like that just feels like more the type of person who would be able to do this.
Yeah, they're a little too fanciful.
Right. I don't believe that they're like deep enough people to like to have that ability. They're just, it's more likely that they're promising you something that they think you want to hear based off how they are and the people they know, rather than like having this deep understanding of this is how death actually works.
So you're kind of saying they're more showmen, dressed up real pretty, big hair.
Right.
This is my name. This is my gimmick. This is my thing.
Yeah.
And entertaining and creating a character of themselves almost.
I don't think, like
a brand, as opposed to a guy who doesn't give a crap about what he looks like and has spent his life focusing. Like that's interesting.
Bert said the sweatpants people. Like the person with sweatpants, like if someone brought me to like some apartment in the middle of nowhere and like I said, there's some person with sweatpants and like a cigarette hanging out of their mouth and they're like, yeah, I can contact dead people. And I'd be like, wow, this person may be more legit because they're not putting on a presentation.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And that's, as we said, that's when people cross the line from real readings into fraud.
Right.
So just as a final thought here, as we're wrapping up, I want to make it clear, everybody knows and understands that we have no hidden agenda. We're not on a witch hunt here against any mediums, especially not Concetta Bertoldi. We have nothing against her.
We're
not trying to slander her or make her look bad. Bear in mind what you heard was one man's account, that one man being Bert, obviously, of one isolated reading. If you've had some amazing readings with Concetta Bertoldi, feel free to let us know about it at Mysterium Bros on Twitter, or you can email us, thebrothersmysterium@gmail.com. We always love to hear the other side of the coin.
Absolutely.
Basically, what this has spawned in me now is I am more eager than ever to see a medium personally. Eric, I think you and I need to experience this.
Yeah, we definitely do.
And while Bert gives some incredible insight and firsthand accounts of his own experiences, I think the time has come. This is something that we need to experience for ourselves. We need to know what it's like when you're the one being read, when mediums are possibly missing, but more importantly, hitting on accurate readings. Things are ringing true. They're mentioning people, places, events that they couldn't know. I think it's time for us to have this for ourselves. So I guarantee you we will find and we will have one, if not more, mediums on this show in the future, and we will document it all. So stay tuned, because that is, I'm throwing it out right now, that is a Mysterium Brothers guarantee to happen next season.
All right.
Next time on the Brothers Mysterium.
Is this fact? Is this fiction?
The body is reduced almost wholly to powder.
You can see the before, you can see the after, but the during is always the unexplained part.
Mrs. Reese are left behind 1 foot, a few pieces of calcined vertebrae, and a head is said by the authorities at the time to have shrunk to the size of a teacup, baseball, or grapefruit.
Clips heard in this episode come from the 1991 TV series James Randi, Psychic Investigator, produced by Granada Television and Open Media. Additional James Randi clips are from the 1993 Nova documentary Secrets of the Psychics, produced by WGBH-TV and released by PBS. Juju Chang's interview with Concetta Bertoldi comes from The Early Show, produced by CBS News Productions and released by CBS. Clips of the psychic detective cases are from KPHO CBS 5 Arizona and the Reuters News Agency. Our theme song is by The Nevergrin. Check them out at thenevergrin.com. To get in touch with us, whether it's to share a story, file a complaint, suggest a topic, etc., hit us up at thebrothersmysterium@gmail.com. And if you're looking for some bonus content and Mysterium extras, you can find more at facebook.com/thebrothersmysterium, at Mysterium Bros on Twitter and Instagram, youtube.com/thebrothersmysterium, and our brand new website, thebrothersmysterium.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and review the show on whichever podcast service or social media site you use. And, as always, thank you for listening to the show.